In 1990, you had confusion. Then you had the quick build out over the 10 or 15 years. Then you had a lull. Then you had the privatization of buildings. And now you're trying to go to an experiential marketplace. "30 years ago, when the premium seat industry officially started, confusion reigned. Nobody knew how many suites to build. Nobody knew how to price them.
An 8-seat suite for 16 home games was $10,000 a year. So think about how far that has grown. Otherwise, none of us would be doing this business anymore.
Nobody knew what a suite director was.
I was the a special services public information manager, and I managed and leased the premium seats at the Hoosier Dome. And that was in 1989. The first conference was in 1990. And the Hoosier Dome became the RCA Dome in 1994.
First suite director I ever met, Dr. J, the Spectrum. He greeted me in a tux.
Dr. Jerry Buss invented, I believe, what was the forefather of club seats or premium seats, which were Senate seats. Back then at the Forum, there was no suite directors. There were salespeople that actually sold those Senate seats as it related to client services and servicing those people. It was open the doors and let them have a good time.
Nobody knew how to service the accounts with food and beverage. It was an entirely different new industry for the sports business.
There were no conversations about gluten-free. There were no conversations about healthy foods. There were no conversations as it related to catering in that building because we didn't have any room to cater.
One thing led to another, and somehow we landed with a one-day meeting in Indy, and it was a conference for about 30 people. Chicago was the second year because Jeff Weinman was the second person to stand up and say, we'll have a real active part in this.
The premium, which because we were in the restaurant business, was the natural place for us. And the premium business, it represented between like 2 and 5% of the total sales. Today it's 65 or 70% of the total sales. Never in my wildest imagination did I think there would be 3, 4, 5, 6 clubs, different kinds of suite products, theater boxes, all inclusive. And that just blows my mind today.
Premium seating in 1990 was 3% of the marketplace. Today, it's 20% of the marketplace, but it's 40% of the ticket revenue. And when you get into the super stadiums like the Rams and Chargers, when they play in the $4.8 billion stadium, it's 56% of the revenue.
As I reflect, premium back then was essentially something more than a general admission seat. Palace of Auburn Hills was just built, which was a very significant project in its time. Transitioning from skyboxes, which were relegated to the top, probably worst views, but somehow that was an experience that became a model for premium. The Palace brought that down to the concourse level, mid-bowl, and even further down into the lower bowl.
At the time, almost all the buildings that were built were publicly built buildings, which means they had to pass referendums. They did what was called contractually obligated income. In other words, what they did was they sold the suites and the premium seats ahead of time, and they used that money to basically float the bonds to build the buildings. And that's how it happened.
Thinking about the waves, it's really the kind of the cycles, if you will, of what's happened in our industry from both a building perspective, a financing perspective, and a lot of the kind of consumer desires. So the first wave is the foundational wave, and then we get a little bit more elevated where you saw this huge influx of arenas and buildings that were brought to market, and really a focus on crafting suites, clubs, and doing them for the business consumer.
Fast forwarding to 1998, 1999, when you had a big explosion.
Everybody tried to top each other. So the buildings started at a certain level and then kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And that went on for about 10 years. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 buildings a year went up. And then the buildings stopped for a few years in that 2004 and 5 range. and they started to have to reevaluate the marketplace in every suite. The biggest change was that the public no longer wanted to fund some of these things. So somewhere around in 2005 or 6, was the introduction of the private buildings. And that created another generation of the buildings. As soon as they went private, the people putting up the money wanted to create more revenue.
Back then, it was just sort of this basic class of differentiation. To me, it was pretty simple. It was a simple formula. And people started to realize that, we have some different preferences. And you started seeing diversity coming online.
There were more club seating, and then suddenly loge boxes, these 4-person suites, started coming in the last few years. And they've become extremely popular because people don't have to invite 12, 14, 15 people.
On the sales perspective, I got to imagine the guys who are selling it were like, okay, I've got a product for different tiers now, and I can change my pricing strategy based on the demand, and I no longer have just 3 products to sell. And then they can package it with different experiences that go with that.
Meanwhile, the pricing changed by sport. So at one time, suites all cost about the same. Now, there's differentiation in the marketplace. There's actually fewer suites now as we build, much fewer. Why? Well, because they charge more. A $100,000 suite in 1990 becomes at the Golden State or Madison Square Gardens $2 million. That's sort of the top price right now, somewhere in that $2 million range. So there's fewer buyers because the numbers were higher, but then they created all these alternative options.
So there's so much more flexibility, there's so much more ability to not feel like you're just in a private, closed suite, and so they're very communal and much more social. The energy that we're seeing from people that are having those experiences has been really positive.
The lease is dying. 10 years became 7 years, became 5 years, became 1 year, now they're suite sharing, and now they're reselling their own suites with or without the permission of the team. And they're still spending the same amount of money, but they're reallocating that money into different sports and different locations. You're going to see corporate suites rented out like hotel rooms. It's no longer going to be a leased product. It's going to be a commodity.
Then 2009 hit, the financial crisis hit, and we were coming off of 10-year suite deals, probably about 80 of them at Staples Center at that time when that hit. We were just opening up LA Live during that time, 2 hotels. So I think that has changed. And then just recently, as you're all aware of, the new tax laws. So it's changed. There's been ebb and flows. But at the end of the day, I think that we've been successful because we've used our assets.
We used to lead with food, and it was about the menu, and it was what we're going to serve. And the way the world has shifted is we lead with experience, and so much of that is service. So the service has become, to me, more important than the food itself, and such an important element of the entire experience. That's the world we live in today.
From a hospitality perspective, think of the power of food. Food has this incredible power to bring human beings together and to pause for a moment and to truly celebrate. Now, that food has a price tag associated with it. So we need to be very mindful and price it accordingly, but we also need to absolutely lean into that value and that benefit of the celebratory power of food. So for us, value is price plus something really, really special, and it's actually making that something special exactly what our guests want.
Today we're bringing all these great local and hyper-local iconic concepts and chef-operated concepts to the premium areas because the premium guests want the really fun food and they don't want the super serious food all the time.
Luxury is not a function of price. Luxury is a function of service. If you want to get a renewal on a suite, give them good service. Don't worry about the price. They will pay the price if they believe they're getting the value, and the value comes from service.
There are times when people are in concession stand lines for 45 minutes, and you need to try to figure that out. There are times when they're stuck in parking structures for 30 to 45 minutes after they leave. We need to figure out how to make that seamless as venue operators and how to make it so smooth that they don't even notice that they're going through a security kiosk. While we may think that it's what we should be doing on a daily basis, that's value.
Teams are trying to do anything they can to increase the fan experience. So the entire facility now is becoming gentrified. They're figuring out clever ways to provide sort of an upgraded premium experience while they're upgrading everybody. The seats are wider, they're more comfortable. There's ways you can order food through cell phones. That's kind of a premium experience. There's more restrooms. There's more women restrooms than men restrooms. They're starting to understand the nature of the fan.
Now we have multiple kitchens and multiple pantries and cooking everywhere, and it just gets more complicated when you have so many kitchens and such complicated infrastructure. But it's what really gives you the reason to come. It gives you the ability to do amazing things and make magic happen.
Premium seating is everywhere. It's every sport. About 1/3 of premium tickets are sold in the concert marketplace, and now it's becoming generalized where I think the entire stadium becomes premium.
My view is, looking forward, is that in a way I was thinking how premium is really relative to something. If it's just a regular seat, okay, that's great. But if you do anything a notch above that, why isn't that considered a premium of some level? So in my view is that there's maybe no premium or there's all premium.
Really focusing on that experience. That's how, to me, and I think our guests are defining value.
At the end of the day, you think about the drop in attendance in a lot of the venues all across sports. What's driving that? What is that? It's not. I don't think it's just really the couch. We're not adapting fast enough to create any kind of experience that these fans really are interested in. It's not that they're not watching sports. In fact, maybe they're even watching sports more, consuming it differently.
They want meaning. They want events. And that's what's happened in the United States. Well, the premium seat marketplace realized that right away.
We created a space within our home office to really push the envelope, to test and try things, whether it be cooking equipment, whether it be technology, whether it be wayfinding or digital signage, or in some cases even merchandise and retail offerings. We're using technology for the optimization of the experience. And so for the premium industry to capitalize on that hospitality for optimization versus just cool gadgets is a game changer.
One of the things that I have learned and will always believe is if you don't have the right people and the right processes in place, it doesn't matter how much technology you have.
The day technology and touch will be in perfect balance is the day we don't talk about them anymore. Technology is finding its true space in our world. And what I mean by that is technology is still talked about as a thing, and we haven't fully grasped that it can be and should be absolutely integrated.
Today, as a venue operator, analytics are incredible. It's an incredible tool for us to figure out, all right, where are our lines? Where are the pinch points? Do we have enough of this food at the concession stand because it's coming up at halftime? Are the parking lots full? Can we direct them to other places? But when I talk about analytics, I want to know what's taking place in that venue on a nightly basis, sometimes on an hourly basis. I want to know how many people are in the building in increments. I want to be able to follow their path of travel. I want to know if I can push out certain things to them to direct them to various areas of our venue. And that's why I believe the importance of analytics in the next year, they're going to be so important to people such as myself as a venue operator.
Our premium guests will have the option, if not part of their relationship, to get driven to and from autonomous vehicles in 5 years from today. It'll be so many benefits to society, but it'll also be just such a premium experience being able to go to and from in this vehicle. It's going to change the traffic flow, it's going to change the parking situation, and so it's going to make the experience for everybody else better as well.
I think in 10 years we aren't going to be talking about physical spaces. I think we're going to be talking about a sense of community. We're going to be looking at the gathering aspects, and those gathering aspects may not be confined to a physical space. And we will learn so much more about the people who are at those gatherings, that what we design and what we do for those individuals will be so incredibly customized. I can only dream of it today. That's how cool and interesting personalization is going to be in the future in wide open spaces.
There are going to be fewer suites, and the stadiums are going to get smaller. But the biggest thing is going to be sports gambling. It's going to end up being a casino. People will come there 24/7. When that happens, the concession companies will be there. When that happens, the business will become office parks. And then you're going to see health clubs and buildings. with entertainment districts built around them as they're now. The state-of-the-art facility is what a cathedral was in the 1900s, and that's going to go on. I don't know whether I'm right. You're always guessing when you're right, but it just makes sense that you can't build a $2 billion privately owned building and use it 13 times a year.
They're really being designed with a much more kind of broad understanding of a social consumer and how do we build spaces that are really based on the user need. Where we're going in the future is how do we design for ultimate flexibility.